Hey, Travels with Dottie here. And if you've been watching the channel lately, you know I've spent quite a bit of time trying to solve the mystery of what happened to a 16-year-old girl named Jessie Phillips. Jessie died here in northern New Mexico in 1894. I've stood at her grave, I've looked for records, I tried to figure out where her family lived, what happened to her, and why she ended up buried where she is. And there's still questions about Jessie that may never be able to answer. But today, I want to tell you about another teenage girl, another girl who was 16 years old. Both of these girls' stories took place in the 19th century, but this second girl lived almost 90 years before Jessie. And unlike Jessie, you probably already know who this girl is and what her name is. In fact, I would guess almost everybody watching this video knows her name, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. Not yet. Because I think if I tell you her name now, you're going to think you already know her. And I'm not sure that you do. I know that I didn't. So for the next few minutes, forget about famous names. Forget about whatever you might remember from history class. I just want you to meet a girl. Her story really begins when she was probably 11 or 12 years old. That's when she was taken from her family, not moved, not sent away. She was taken. She was captured and carried hundreds of miles away from her home, away from her family, away from her people. Think about being 11 years old. Think about what you were doing when you were 11. And now imagine that everything that you knew simply disappeared. Your parents, your family, your home, your language, your culture, and everything. You have absolutely no control over what happens next. She eventually ended up with a man much older than she was. History describes her as his wife. Exactly how that happened isn't really clear, and I want to be careful here because I don't want to tell you something we can't document. There are historical accounts suggesting that she may have been purchased or possibly won through gambling. What we do know is that she'd been taken from her people as a child. We know that she had no control over the circumstances of her life. And while she was still a teenager, she became pregnant by this man. And at 16, she gave birth to a little boy. So let's stop right there for a second. She's 16. She's been kidnapped from her family. She's living hundreds of miles from where she was born. She's with a man much older than she is. And now she's a teenage mother. By modern standards, I think we'd look at this girl very differently than people did at the time. We'd see a child who had been kidnapped. We'd see someone who had been exploited. We'd see a teenage mother whose choices about her own life had been extraordinarily limited. And if the story ended there, it would already be an extraordinary life. But that's where the part of her story that fascinates me, that's where it begins. Because 2 months after giving birth, the 16-year-old girl and her baby set off on a journey with a group of men. These weren't ordinary men. They were on an extraordinarily important mission. Their leaders were experienced military officers. They'd been selected because their government believed they were capable of accomplishing something that had never been done before. They had supplies, they had weapons, they had scientific instruments, they had training, they had experience, and they had the backing of their government. The 16-year-old mother had none of those things. In fact, they hadn't even recruited her. They wanted the man she was with, so she could translate for them. She came along with him, and that's part of the story I can't get out of my head. I think about the expectations. Here are these experienced adult men setting out on an incredibly difficult and dangerous mission. They've been selected for it, they're prepared for it. This is their job. And there's this 16-year-old girl carrying a 2-month-old baby. What could anybody possibly have expected from her? Probably not very much, maybe just for survival. By almost any standard you could use at the time, she would have been one of the least powerful people in that group, if not the, other than the baby, the least powerful. A teenager, a woman, indigenous, a woman carrying an infant, a person who'd been taken from her own people and who had very little control over how she had gotten there in the first place. Nobody had selected her because they thought she was extraordinary in any way. Nobody had chosen her to accomplish some great mission. She was simply there. And then, here we go. She started proving just how valuable she was. At one point, one of their boats nearly capsized. The boat contained medicines, instruments, books, papers, and supplies that were enormously important to the mission. Things started washing overboard. And while the men were struggling to save the boat and themselves, this teenage mother started grabbing things out of the water. She saved item after item. One of the leaders of the expedition later wrote about what she had done in a journal. He said that she had shown fortitude and resolution equal to anyone aboard the boat. Think about that. Not equal to another woman, not impressive for a teenager, equal to every man on that boat. And remember, let's not forget, she's 16 years old and she's taking care of an infant at the same time she's doing this. And they continued traveling, and she was able to find and identify plants and other foods that could be eaten. She understood things about the country that these men didn't. And eventually, she began recognizing places because they were moving toward the country she had known as a child before she was taken, the country she had been taken from years earlier. And she provided something else that nobody could have anticipated. Imagine that you live somewhere in this enormous wilderness, and one day a group of heavily armed strangers appears over that mountain. You don't know who they are. You don't know what they want. And are they coming to trade? Are they coming to attack? But then you notice something unusual. There's a young woman traveling with them, and she's carrying a baby. One of the expedition's leaders eventually recognized how important that was. A war party didn't travel with a woman and her infant. Her presence communicated something that their weapons and explanations couldn't do. We're not here to fight you. Just by being here with her child, this teenage mother helped make this group of armed strangers appear less threatening. And then the expectation encountered a problem, a big problem. It absolutely threatened their ability to continue. They had reached mountains. To get themselves and their supplies across those mountains, they desperately needed horses. The people who had those horses spoke a language these men couldn't speak. But you guessed it, that teenage mother could, because these were her people. These were the people she had been taken from when she was a child. Suddenly, the person who had entered this expedition with perhaps the lowest expectations attached to her become incredibly important to whether it could continue. And then something happened. If somebody wrote it into a movie script, you might think it was a little too convenient. They finally encountered the people they needed to negotiate with. The teenage girl came forward to help communicate, and she recognized the chief of this tribe. It was her brother. The brother she had been separated from when she was taken from her family years earlier. Just imagine that moment. You're still a teenager. You're carrying your infant son. You've traveled an enormous distance with this group of strangers. You're finally back among the people you were taken from as a child, and standing in front of you is your brother. And these experienced explorers now need you. They need you to help them communicate. They need you desperately to help establish trust. And they desperately needed the horses these people have if they're going to continue their journey. Otherwise, it's just going to fail. She helped them do it. They got the horses, and the journey continued. Eventually, after an extraordinary amount of hardship, they reached their destination. And at one point, when the group had to decide where they would spend the winter, something else happened that I find amazing. The leaders asked members of the expedition for their opinions, and this teenage indigenous mother was among the people whose preference was recorded. Think about this. When this was happening, women in the United States wouldn't have the constitutional right to vote for more than a century. Native Americans weren't recognized as U.S. citizens, and yet her opinion mattered enough in that moment to be recorded along with the others in their vote. Eventually, the expedition turned around. They made the long journey back, and they made it home. The two men that led that expedition became American legends. Their names ended up in virtually every American history book, and they deserve enormous credit for what they did. What they accomplished was extraordinary, but here's what I've been thinking about. They were supposed to be extraordinary. They had been selected for this. They were experienced adult men. They were military officers. Their government had looked at the task and decided that these were the people capable of accomplishing this monumental task. They had preparation. They had equipment. They had authority, and they had expectations placed upon them. People expected them to succeed. But what did anybody expect from that 16-year-old mother? The girl who had been kidnapped when she was 11 or 12. The girl who had been taken hundreds of miles from her family. The girl who had been given birth only weeks before leaving on this journey. The girl nobody had recruited, probably very little, and she saved critical supplies. She helped them find food. She recognized the country. She helped communicate with people they couldn't communicate with. Her presence helped convince people that these armed strangers weren't there to make war. And when the expedition desperately needed horses to cross the mountains, she made that possible. I told you at the beginning I wasn't going to give you her name. There was a reason for that. Because if I had started this video by saying her name, I think most of us would have immediately put her into a little box in our heads. A historical figure. Somebody we vaguely remember from school. An Indian woman who helped some explorers. Maybe somebody whose face you've seen on a dollar coin. I didn't want you to meet the historical figure. I wanted you to meet the girl first. I wanted you to think about what had happened to her. I wanted you to think about how old she was. I wanted you to think about that baby she was carrying. And most of all, I wanted you to think about what anybody could possibly have reasonably expected from her. Because I can now tell you who everybody was. Those two expedition leaders were Meriwether Lewis and William Clark. The journey was the Lewis and Clark expedition, the core of discovery, and that 16-year-old teenage mother traveling with him, that the girl who had been kidnapped from her family, the girl had almost no control over the circumstances that brought her there. The person they hadn't actually recruited, the person from whom almost nothing could be reasonably have been expected, was Sacagawea. And after spending time learning about her, I've come to a conclusion I didn't expect. I'm more impressed with Sacagawea than I am with Lewis and Clark. And I don't mean that as any kind of criticism of Lewis and Clark. What they accomplished was remarkable, but they were expected to know what they were doing. They were our government's best estimation of experts most capable of accomplishing this mission. Sacagawea wasn't. Nobody had spent months preparing her. Nobody had equipped her for this. No one had selected her because they thought she possessed any kind of skill or ability. She was a displaced 16-year-old mother carrying a baby. The expectations for her couldn't have been much lower. And yet, when circumstances demanded something from her, over and over and over and over again, she rose to meet them. And here's something I didn't know until I started looking into her story. According to the National Park Service, more statues have been dedicated to Sacagawea than to any other American woman. Think about that for a moment. Think about that. This girl who began this journey at about 16 years old, a teenage mother, a girl who had been kidnapped from her family, a girl who had almost no control over her life circumstances and what put her there, a girl the expedition hadn't even set out to recruit, would eventually have more statues dedicated to her than any other American woman. There's something poetic about that, because during her lifetime, Sacagawea had a remarkably little power over her own life. But history did not forget her. More than 200 years later, we've put her on our money. We've put up statues of her across the country. We've named mountains, rivers, and other places after her. And we're still telling her story. But I wonder sometimes whether we've turned her into such a familiar historical figure that we've forgotten to actually look at the girl, not as a statue, not as a picture in history, not as a face on a coin, but as a 16-year-old girl who had already endured more than most people will ever before her adult life had even begun. A teenage mother for whom almost nothing had gone according to her own choosing. And when history unexpectedly put her in a position where she mattered, she mattered. That's why this story has gotten deeply to me. I spent so many weeks thinking about another 16-year-old girl from the 19th century, Jessie Phillips. Two teenage girls, almost 90 years apart, two completely different lives. And there are things about Jessie Phillips that I may never know. There's things about Sacagawea that we'll never know either. But I'm glad I took the time to look beyond the name I remembered from history class, because I don't think I'll ever look at Sacagawea the same way. I won't. And maybe now you won't either. I know this video was a little different, but I still hope you enjoyed it. And just as always, I'm going to see you tomorrow.